I didn't even want to be here. The last place I'd planned on spending my Saturday was in an ancient ruins site with a bunch of scientists and a dad who thought studying old alien tech was somehow family bonding. And I definitely didn't want to be in some crumbling temple in the middle of nowhere on Telka Prime, a planet at the edge of the known galaxy, with rain beating down and the smell of wet stone and alien moss everywhere. But that's where I was, leaning against a slimy stone pillar and trying not to roll my eyes too hard as my dad adjusted his data pad, scanning some weird-looking inscriptions. He was an archaeologist who specialized in ancient alien artifacts, and he swore this site was special, something about an ancient war, a lost civilization. It was supposed to be one of the biggest discoveries in the galaxy. He just hadn't counted on dragging his 16-year-old son into it. "Jason," he called, not looking up from his screen. "Just give me a minute, okay? This could be significant." "Yeah, right," I muttered, glancing around. I wasn't about to sit around waiting for him to uncover some dusty rock. I wandered deeper into the ruins, following the strange symbols carved into the walls, each one twisted and jagged, looking like something out of a nightmare. The further I went, the colder it got, and soon I couldn't even hear the rain outside. All I could hear was my own footsteps echoing through the dark corridors. After a few minutes, I found myself in a huge, open chamber, lit by strange biolite crystals embedded in the walls. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it, some kind of device glowed faintly. It looked like a tablet, but way older and a lot more alien. It was like something out of a sci-fi horror movie, and I should have turned around right then. But curiosity got the better of me. "Jason," Dad's voice echoed distantly. He'd probably noticed I was gone. I reached out to touch the tablet, feeling its cold, smooth surface. The symbols carved into it pulsed faintly under my fingers, like they were alive, responding to my touch. For some reason, I couldn't look away. It was almost like the tablet was calling to me. Then, before I knew what was happening, the tablet activated, glowing so brightly that I had to shield my eyes. A deep rumbling sound filled the room, and suddenly, there was a voice in my head, not speaking any language I'd ever heard, but I understood it all the same. "Designation, Child of Terra. Query initiated." I jerked my hand back, heart pounding. What the hell?" The voice was calm, almost amused. "Processing query. Origin, Terra. Analysis, primitive species. Conflict initiated." I took a step back, panic flaring in my chest. The room seemed to come alive around me, the walls humming with energy as if they'd just woken up from a million-year slumber. "What did I do?" I whispered. The tablet flared brighter, and images flashed through my mind. I saw starships, vast fleets clashing in space, alien soldiers charging across battlefields, entire planets falling to ruin. It was like I was watching a highlight reel of every terrible war that had ever happened. And it was all tied to this place, to whatever ancient race had built it. Then I saw two faces, alien and monstrous, locked in a silent, unending struggle. They were unlike anything I'd ever seen. One was all sharp angles and shadow, a creature of pure darkness and rage, while the other was bright, armored in gleaming metal, its form shifting like liquid. Both stared at each other with pure hatred, and somehow I knew they were enemies, locked in a war that had been raging long before I was born. And then the strangest thing happened. Both faces turned to me, as if noticing me for the first time. It was like I'd interrupted something ancient, something sacred. "Conflict detected," the voice said, sounding almost irritated. My heart pounded in my chest as the tablet's symbols glowed brighter, and suddenly I was sucked into something deeper, like a virtual reality world, but more intense, more real than anything I'd ever experienced. I was floating in space, watching as two enormous starships clashed in the void, their energy weapons blazing, tearing into each other with terrifying power. "You have interrupted the trial," the voice echoed in my mind, stern and unyielding. "Only a champion may break the stalemate." I'm not a champion," I stammered, feeling the weight of the moment bearing down on me. But the voice continued as if I hadn't spoken. "A war has raged for 10,000 centuries, We await judgment. Proceed. The vision faded, and I was back in the room, staring at the tablet. It pulsed again, and suddenly, I felt like something was coursing through me, a knowledge, an understanding that wasn't mine, but was becoming mine all the same. I understood the symbols now, the ancient language, the purpose of the device. It was a weapon, but not in any traditional sense. It was something far older, a construct designed to resolve a war that had torn apart countless worlds. And for some reason, it had chosen me to be its judge. "Jason, what are you doing?" Dad's voice was closer now, his footsteps echoing in the corridor behind me. I turned, trying to process everything, but it was too late. The tablet had already activated something far beyond my control. Dad appeared in the doorway, his face pale as he took in the sight of me standing there with the tablet glowing in my hands. His eyes darted from me to the ancient artifact, and I could tell he knew something was wrong. "Jason, step away from that thing," he said, voice low, but I barely heard him. I was still locked into the tablet's power, feeling its energy wrap around my mind like vines, pulling me deeper into some kind of psychic link with it. As if sensing my hesitation, Dad took a step closer. "Jason, that's not just a relic. It's ancient weaponry. We're not authorized to even be near this thing." I barely registered what he was saying. The room seemed to pulse, the symbols on the walls glowing faintly in response to the tablet in my hands. It was like the whole place was coming alive, reacting to the device, and to me. I could feel the weight of countless lives, battles, wars stretching back to the dawn of time, all connected to this one small object. And then, the voice returned, deep and resonant, echoing through the chamber and directly into my mind. "Command acknowledged. New champion identified." "Champion?" I whispered, feeling the words settle heavily in my chest. Dad's eyes widened, fear flashing across his face. He reached out, trying to pull me away, but the tablet's energy flared, forming an invisible barrier between us. "Jason, what are you doing? Let go of it." His voice was desperate, but I couldn't release the tablet even if I wanted to. It was as if it had bonded to me, embedding itself into my very consciousness. "Champion, prepare for arbitration," the voice commanded, ignoring Dad's shouts. "Proceed to initiate final judgment." And then I was pulled, mentally, somewhere else. Suddenly, I was floating in a vast, dark space, suspended in the middle of what looked like an ancient, decaying battlefield. Massive ships drifted around me, lifeless and crumbling, remnants of a war so old that the stars had shifted since its beginning. The scale of destruction was impossible to comprehend. Entire planets had been turned into rubble, asteroids reduced to dust, and dead starships floated like corpses in the abyss. Before me, two figures materialized, each one towering and radiating an aura of raw power. They were the same beings I'd seen in my vision earlier, the two titans locked in an eternal struggle. The one on the left was cloaked in dark, writhing shadows, its form jagged and angular, while the other gleamed with an almost blinding light, its shape fluid and metallic, shifting like quicksilver. They faced each other, neither speaking, but I could feel the weight of their hatred filling the air. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "We are the progenitors," the Dark One answered, its voice as cold as the depths of space. "We forged the stars, built worlds, created life, and in doing so, we became divided." The light being spoke next, its tone calm and measured. "Our philosophies diverged, our methods clashed. Where I sought harmony, my counterpart chose domination. Thus, the war began." It was insane, beyond anything I'd ever imagined. Here were two entities older than civilization itself, locked in a conflict that had spanned millennia. And somehow, I was now part of it. "Why me?" I asked, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "I'm just a kid." The progenitor of light regarded me with something like curiosity. "You were chosen not by us, but by the device. It seeks a mind unclouded by biases of our age, one capable of wielding judgment with purity." "A human mind," the Shadowed One added with a sneer. "Primitive, emotional, yet possessing a peculiar resilience." I felt a chill run down my spine. These beings, for all their power, saw humans as little more than ants. And yet, here I was, being asked to settle their war. What exactly do you want me to do? The shadowed progenitor stepped forward, its eyes like burning coals. Render judgment. Decide which of us prevails. The light being's gaze was unyielding. Or choose peace, if you believe it possible. I swallowed hard. I was supposed to judge beings who had seen the rise and fall of entire star systems, who had fought battles on a scale I couldn't even comprehend. It was insane. But I could feel the tablet's influence guiding me, calming my thoughts, helping me see past my fear. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, and when I opened them, I felt a strange clarity. "Why can't you both just stop fighting?" I asked, knowing it was a naive question. The light being tilted its head slightly. Peace was once our goal, but my counterpart values control above all, and such a being cannot tolerate dissent. The shadowed figure let out a dark chuckle. And my counterpart's idea of peace would see the universe chained, bound by the laws it deems fit. So that was it. They were fighting for control of the galaxy, each one convinced that their way was the only way. I felt a surge of anger, surprising even myself. They dragged countless civilizations into their war, destroyed worlds, wiped out species, all because they couldn't see past their own egos. "Enough," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're both so wrapped up in your principles that you don't care about anyone else. You've turned the galaxy into a graveyard, and for what? Just to prove who's right." The shadowed progenitor's eyes flared with anger, but the light being raised a hand, signaling for silence. "And what would you suggest, young champion?" it asked, almost gently. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the tablet in my hand. "If you really care about the galaxy, you'll put aside your differences and leave the rest of us alone. The universe isn't yours to control, it belongs to everyone." For a long moment, there was silence, the two progenitors staring at me as if weighing my words. Then, the light being nodded slowly. "Perhaps the boy speaks truth." The shadowed progenitor growled, its form flickering with anger. "You would surrender to a child's judgment? You, who once sought order in all things." "Order cannot be imposed by force," the light being replied calmly. "We have lost ourselves in this war. Perhaps it is time we left the universe to find its own path." The shadowed figure let out a roar of rage, but it was clear even it knew the fight was over. With one last look at me, it dissolved into darkness, vanishing into the void. The light being turned to me, a faint smile on its face. "You have done what we could not, Jason. You have ended the war." And then, just as suddenly, it too was gone, leaving me standing alone in the ruined chamber, the tablet silent in my hands. I stumbled back, feeling the weight of what had just happened. The progenitors, the beings who had once ruled the galaxy, were gone, their war ended by a kid from Earth. Behind me, Dad finally managed to push through the barrier, his face pale and eyes wide as he took in the scene. What just happened?" he whispered. I looked down at the tablet, feeling a strange sense of peace. "I think I just ended the longest war in history." Dad's eyes widened even further, and he opened his mouth to say something, but I held up a hand, stopping him. "Let's just go home, Dad. I've had enough ancient history for one day." When we got back to the ship, everything was different. I mean, the ship looked the same, standard walls, dim lights, rows of terminals flickering with data. But there was something heavy in the air, something hard to put into words. I could feel Dad's eyes on me, that mix of pride and fear burning in his gaze. And while I wanted to talk about what had happened, wanted to try to wrap my mind around it, I couldn't. It was like the moment I'd let go of the tablet, the weight of what I'd done had crashed into me, leaving me empty, lost. Dad put a hand on my shoulder, his grip solid, grounding. "Jason, what you did back there, you did what no one else could. You know that, right?" I nodded, but the words felt hollow. Sure, I'd stop the war, but at what cost? I didn't even know what kind of balance I just upset or if that peace was going to hold. What if it all crumbled the second I turned my back? I just told them to leave us alone, I mumbled. I don't know if it'll even last. Dad's face softened, and he gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Sometimes that's all you can do. You didn't just make a choice for you, Jason. You made a choice for all of us. That's not something just anyone could do. As we sat in silence, the low hum of the ship was broken by a sharp alert. Dad's hand dropped from my shoulder, and he strode over to the console, punching a few buttons. His face hardened as he scanned the readouts. "What's going on?" I asked, forcing myself out of my daze. "We've got incoming," he muttered, his jaw tight. "A signal. No, multiple signals, heading straight for us." My blood ran cold. "You think they're back?" Dad's face went pale. "I don't know. But whatever it is, they're big, and they're not friendly." Without another word, we moved to battle stations. The console screens lit up with readings and displays, showing an armada of ships converging on our location. I could feel my heart pounding as I took in the sheer number of them, dozens, maybe hundreds of vessels, all sleek and deadly, gleaming in the darkness. "These aren't progenitors," Dad said, studying the readings. This looks like—" His voice trailed off, and I could see the recognition in his eyes. "It's the Separatists. The ones who fought against the progenitors during the war. They must have seen the progenitors vanish and are moving in to seize control." "Great," I muttered. "Just when I thought we'd finally get a break." Dad shook his head. "This isn't just a fight for control, Jason. These guys have been in hiding for millennia, biding their time, waiting for this exact moment. They're here to take over, and they won't let anything stand in their way." The ships grew larger on the screen as they approached, moving with terrifying precision. I felt my pulse quicken, the weight of everything bearing down on me again. Here I was, a kid with no training, facing down a fleet of battle-hardened warriors who'd been waiting centuries for revenge. "Jason," Dad said, his voice steady, "we don't have a lot of options here, but if you could communicate with the progenitors, maybe you could reach out to them." I shook my head, fear gripping me. "But they're gone. They left. There's no way to get them back." Dad's face softened, and he put a hand on my shoulder. "You said they left because of you, right? Maybe they're still listening. Maybe they're waiting to see if you'll ask for help." I didn't have time to doubt myself. I closed my eyes, clutching the tablet that had somehow been tucked into my pocket during our hasty retreat. Reaching deep within myself, I focused on the connection I'd felt with the progenitors, that strange link that had let me touch their thoughts and see into their minds. "Please," I thought, sending my desperation out into the void. "If you can hear me, we need help." Silence. I opened my eyes, feeling a rush of disappointment, but there was no time to dwell on it. The Separatist fleet was almost upon us, and we had to prepare for a fight. But just as Dad moved to arm the weapons, the entire ship began to shudder. The lights flickered, the engines whined, and the console displays began to go haywire. I braced myself, gripping the edge of the console, as a strange energy filled the air. And then they appeared. Not in the same physical way they had before, but as shimmering projections, ghostly images of the two progenitors hovering in the air before me. They looked at each other, and then at me, their expressions unreadable. "You summoned us, young champion," the light progenitor said, its voice as calm and cold as ever. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. I didn't know if you'd come." The shadowed progenitor sneered, but there was a hint of amusement in its gaze. "We said we would depart, but we did not say we would cease observing. Tell us, champion, what trouble has arisen in our absence?" I gestured at the screen, showing the approaching Separatist fleet. "They're here, the ones who fought against you. They're trying to take control now that you're gone." The light progenitor's eyes narrowed as it studied the display. "The Separatists, they were once our allies, before they turned on us. We did not anticipate they would emerge so quickly." I felt a surge of anger. "You didn't anticipate? You abandoned the galaxy to your own war, and now everyone else has to pick up the pieces. You can't just leave us to clean up your mess." The shadowed progenitor laughed, a dark, rumbling sound. "Such boldness. Perhaps you have learned more from us than we realized." The light progenitor nodded slowly. "Perhaps it was an error to leave the universe to its fate. Perhaps it is time we took responsibility for what we have wrought." With that, they turned their gaze toward the separatist fleet. I watched as their forms seemed to grow, filling the room, their presence overwhelming, terrifying, and then, without another word, they vanished. A moment later, the separatist ships on the screen began to falter. Engines failed, weapon systems went offline, and entire vessels drifted, powerless. It was as if some invisible force was dismantling them piece by piece, stripping away their power until they were nothing but hollow shells. Dad and I watched in awe as the separatist fleet crumbled before our eyes. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized, the once mighty armada reduced to little more than scrap metal drifting in the void. And then, just as suddenly as they'd come, the progenitors were gone. For a long moment, neither Dad nor I spoke. The ship was silent, the screens dark, the weight of everything settling over us like a thick fog. Finally, Dad broke the silence. "Jason, I don't know what to say." I looked down at the tablet in my hands, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. I'd call the progenitors back, force them to face the consequences of their war. But in doing so, I'd lost the one connection I'd had to that ancient power, that sense of purpose. I think they're really gone this time," I said softly, my voice barely a whisper. Dad put a hand on my shoulder, his grip steady and comforting. "Maybe that's for the best, Jason. Maybe now we can finally move on." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my chest. The war was over. The progenitors had departed, and the galaxy was finally free to find its own path. And as we sat there, watching the stars drift by, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I'd found my own path too. After the separatists' defeat, everything should have settled into some kind of peace. But instead, the galaxy seemed more tense than ever. Word of the progenitors' intervention had spread quickly. Every corner of the universe was buzzing about how a lone human, the champion they called me, had summoned these ancient beings back into action. Some factions took it as a sign that humans held unimaginable power. Others saw it as a reason to fear and distrust us even more. We didn't have much time to worry about the chatter, though. A new signal hit our ship's sensors not 2 weeks later. This one was different from the previous encounters. It was an invitation, a request to come before the Universal Arbitration Council. Apparently, my actions had sparked enough controversy that the galaxy's governing bodies wanted to get involved. Dad looked at the message with a frown. "They're calling you to testify. Looks like they want answers. Or maybe they just want to size you up." "Testify?" I scoffed, trying to mask the nervousness twisting my gut. "For what? I didn't even do anything on purpose. It's not like I was some big hero or strategist. I was just there when everything went down." Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. "Jason, this isn't about what you did or didn't mean to do. You've become a symbol. You've done something that no one else has, and now the galaxy's rulers want to understand what it means." "So they can control it?" I asked, a hint of bitterness creeping into my voice. "Probably." Dad put a hand on my shoulder. "But if you go, you can tell them your side of things. You can show them that humans aren't some threat or power-hungry force. You might be able to change how they see us, once and for all." Reluctantly, I agreed, and we made preparations for the journey. Our destination was the Council's seat of power, a sprawling space station orbiting the dying star they called Orion's Fall. The journey there was uneventful, which only served to heighten my anxiety. The calm before the storm. When we finally docked at the station, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The Council's representatives were waiting for us as we disembarked. Tall, stern-looking beings from every race and species, their eyes glinting with suspicion, curiosity, and something else, maybe even fear. One of them stepped forward, a figure wrapped in shimmering blue robes, her skin translucent and glittering like crystal. She introduced herself as Speaker Eshra, one of the council's leading voices. "Jason," she said, inclining her head, "the champion of humanity, we have awaited your arrival. There are many questions we seek to ask, and many truths that need to be uncovered." I swallowed, glancing at Dad, who gave me an encouraging nod. I'll answer whatever I can," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The speaker nodded and gestured for us to follow. We were led into a vast chamber where representatives from dozens of species sat, each one watching us with intense, unblinking eyes. At the center of the room was a raised platform, and I was instructed to stand upon it. The speaker's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "We are gathered here today to discuss the events surrounding the recent defeat of the progenitors and the role of this human, Jason, in their departure. It has been claimed that he possesses an ability to summon the progenitors, to bend them to his will. We seek to understand the nature of this power, and to determine what it means for the balance of the galaxy." A murmur spread through the room, a chorus of alien voices rising and falling as the various representatives conferred with one another. I felt a surge of panic. This was too big, too much. I was just a kid who had stumbled into something way over his head. "Jason," the speaker addressed me directly, her voice calm but probing. "Tell us, in your own words, how you came to be involved in this matter. What connection do you hold with the progenitors?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on me. I didn't summon them on purpose," I began, my voice wavering slightly. "I was just there. I touched this device, and it was like I could feel them, hear them, understand them. They called me a champion, but I don't even know what that means. I just asked them to stop the fighting." The room fell silent as my words hung in the air. The speaker's gaze softened, but there was still a sharpness to her expression, a hint of doubt. "And yet, by your own admission, you claim to have swayed beings of immense power with nothing more than a request. Do you expect us to believe that this was mere coincidence?" I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could speak, another voice cut through the room. "It is no coincidence," a figure in dark, flowing robes interjected. His face was hidden, but his voice carried a weight, a depth that silenced the room instantly. "The progenitors did not respond to this human by chance. He is a catalyst, a force of disruption. Whether he realizes it or not, he holds the power to reshape the galaxy." The speaker turned to the newcomer, her expression unreadable. "Seer Varric, your insights are always enlightening, but we seek facts, not prophecies." The figure, Varric, chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. "Facts? Very well. Here is a fact for you. This boy's actions have already shifted the balance. The progenitors, once the architects of our universe's order, are gone. The power vacuum they left behind will not remain empty for long." I felt a chill run down my spine. Power vacuum. I hadn't even thought about that. In my mind, getting rid of the progenitors was supposed to be a good thing, a way to bring peace. But if what Varric was saying was true, I'd just thrown the galaxy into chaos. The speaker's gaze hardened as she addressed me again. "Jason, do you understand the implications of what you have done? The progenitor's departure has left the galaxy vulnerable. Now, every faction, every warlord and conqueror, will be vying for control, and many of them will look to you as the key to seizing that power." My hands clenched at my sides as the weight of her words settled over me. She was right. I'd thought I was helping, but I'd only made things more dangerous, and now they were all looking at me to fix it. But I'm not a hero," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want any of this. I just wanted the fighting to stop." The speaker's expression softened slightly, but there was still a steely resolve in her eyes. "Sometimes the universe does not ask for heroes, Jason. Sometimes it creates them out of necessity. Whether you like it or not, you have become a symbol, a beacon of hope or of fear. And now, you must decide what that symbol will mean." I swallowed hard, feeling the enormity of her words pressing down on me. I wasn't just some kid anymore. I'd become something bigger, something I couldn't fully understand, and the fate of the galaxy was hanging in the balance. I glanced at Dad, who gave me a nod of encouragement. He believed in me, even if I didn't believe in myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start with. Taking a deep breath, I looked back at the council, my resolve hardening. I don't know if I'm ready for this. But if I can help, if I can find a way to bring peace, then I'll do whatever it takes. The speaker nodded approvingly, a faint smile touching her lips. Then let it be known that Jason, the champion of humanity, has pledged himself to the cause of peace, and may the universe judge his actions accordingly. As the council adjourned, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. I still didn't know what the future held, or if I even had the strength to face it. But one thing was certain, I wasn't just some kid from Earth anymore. I was the champion, and the galaxy was watching. Leaving the council was like stepping from one world into another. I'd come in feeling like a confused, lost kid, and now I was walking out as something else, something bigger, something they called champion. But titles were the least of my problems. The progenitor's absence had unleashed a new wave of chaos. Every faction with an ounce of ambition was eyeing the galaxy like a prize, and the council seemed less like a beacon of order and more like a fragile thread holding everything together. Jason, Dad's voice brought me back, his expression somber as we walked back to our ship. They've put a lot on you, maybe too much. But you need to know, you don't have to do this alone. For the first time, I saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the years of protecting and guiding me, and how hard it had been on him too. But he was still here, ready to fight if I was. I gave a slight nod, determined to show him, and myself, that I was ready. As we prepped the ship for departure, a message alert blinked on our console. It was marked urgent and came from the Seer Verk. My stomach twisted as I opened it, the holographic image flickering to life. Jason, Verk's voice was as ominous as ever. There's something you need to know. The progenitor's disappearance has set off more than a power struggle. It's triggered a ripple through the very fabric of our universe. And it's not just affecting politics. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. Their exit destabilized something ancient, something older than even the progenitors themselves. A presence beyond understanding, lying dormant for eons, until now. The council fears it, but they won't speak of it publicly. I came to you because you may be the only one who can stop it. A chill swept over me as he spoke. What are you talking about? Some kind of weapon? Not a weapon. Something far worse, he replied. An intelligence, a being that exists beyond our comprehension, one the progenitors contained. With them gone, there's nothing keeping it at bay. Dad and I exchanged a look, fear and disbelief flashing between us. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why not warn the entire galaxy? Because they wouldn't understand, Verk said. They'd panic. But you face the progenitors, summon them even, without fully understanding your own power. Whatever connection you have to them might be enough to contain this threat. You have to try. He vanished from the screen, leaving us in silence. My heart was pounding, but I could feel something shifting inside me, a strange, terrifying certainty that he was right. The progenitors had chosen me, for reasons I still didn't understand, and now it was my responsibility to carry their legacy forward, to face whatever they'd left behind. Dad looked at me, his face pale but resolute. Whatever this is, we're facing it together. But Jason, if we do this, we're leaving any semblance of a normal life behind. I know, I replied, meeting his gaze. But normal's long gone. I've got a galaxy to protect, and I can't walk away now. The journey to the edge of the galaxy was quiet and tense. As we neared our destination, a point in deep space that Verk had marked, our sensors began picking up strange readings, energy levels spiking off the charts. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything went still. Ahead of us was an anomaly. It looked like a wound in space itself, a dark, swirling vortex that seemed to devour light. I'd never seen anything like it, and every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to get as far away as possible. but I took a deep breath, forcing myself to steady my nerves. "This is it," I said quietly. "Whatever the progenitors were containing, it's in there." Dad nodded, his hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "We're here with you, son. Let's end this." As we approached, the vortex began to shift, almost as if it recognized us. It pulsed with a dark, eerie rhythm, and I felt a presence brush against my mind, cold and ancient and impossibly vast. I gasped, clutching my head as visions flooded my mind, visions of worlds collapsing, stars imploding, entire galaxies consumed by this relentless force. A voice echoed through my thoughts, deep and alien, its tone laced with contempt. "You are nothing, a fleeting spark in the endless dark, and yet you stand before me." I gritted my teeth, trying to push back against the oppressive weight of its voice. "I don't care what you are," I spat out. "I'm not backing down." The presence seemed to recoil slightly, as if my defiance had surprised it. But then, its laughter, cold and cruel, filled my mind. The progenitors were fools to think they could contain me. They failed, as you will fail. I felt the darkness closing in, pressing down on me, but I refused to give in. Somewhere, deep inside, a flicker of light stirred, a memory of the progenitors' power, their wisdom. They'd chosen me, marked me for a reason, and I wasn't about to let their legacy end here. Focusing all my will, I reached out to that flicker, drawing on whatever strength I could muster. The presence shrieked as my defiance cut through its darkness, and I felt it waver, its hold weakening. "Jason," Dad's voice broke through the haze, anchoring me. "You can do this. You've already done the impossible. Just remember who you are." With a surge of determination, I pushed back against the entity, channeling everything I had into one single, focused thought: "You do not belong here." The darkness rippled, fracturing as the light within me blazed brighter, stronger. The entity shrieked, a sound that shook me to my core, but I held firm, refusing to let it consume me. I was human, and that meant something. It meant resilience, strength, a refusal to give up even in the face of the impossible. Finally, with a blinding flash, the darkness shattered, dissolving into nothingness. The vortex collapsed in on itself, the stars reappearing in the space it had once occupied. I slumped forward, exhausted but alive, the weight of the encounter settling over me. Dad caught me before I fell, his grip steady and reassuring. "You did it," he murmured, pride and relief evident in his voice. I managed a weak smile. "Yeah, I guess I did." When we returned to the council, they were waiting, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. I could see the shift in their eyes, the way they looked at me now, not just as some kid or a symbol, but as someone who had faced the darkness and won. Speaker Eshra stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 witnesses. "Jason, champion of humanity, you have done what none before you could. You have saved us all." I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who'd barely scraped by, who'd fought with everything he had because there was no other choice. But as I looked around, at the faces of those who'd feared and doubted me, I realized that I'd proven something about humanity, about our place in this universe. "We're not conquerors," I said, my voice steady and clear. "We're survivors, fighters, and if anyone threatens what we stand for, we won't back down." The council members nodded, their approval evident, but I knew that this wasn't the end. There would always be new threats, new challenges. But for now, at least, the galaxy was safe. As we left the council chamber, Dad put an arm around my shoulders, his eyes glinting with pride. "You did good, Jason. Real good." I smiled, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. "Yeah, but somehow, I think this is just the beginning." And as we boarded our ship, ready to face whatever came next, I felt a spark of excitement, a new purpose, a new adventure. The galaxy was vast, and while the progenitor's legacy was behind me, my own story was just beginning.